fired up probably 10 or 15 minutes ago here. We've got some steam going already. Only have, I think, about 145 gallons to boil down today, so we won't be doing this for very long. Not been a great year this year. Only made about 30 gallons so far. Last year we closed out the year at about 70. And at this point we're just basically boiling whatever runs just to try to gain a little bit extra, even though most of it is going to be not super nice syrup, at least it'll be syrup. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I will try to monitor the bottom of the screen as much as I can. One thing that happens in here is we do get a decent bit of dust that floats around, especially being all wood fired. So I'll go around and wipe off the hood occasionally. Cleans things up a little bit. Makes it look a little nicer. Everything in here is, as you may imagine, very warm with steam and boiling. Boiling water basically in the back, and then boiling almost syrup in the front, which runs somewhere in the 217 to 219 degree range. The back runs probably about 213, I'd say. Things looking a little presentable. There we go. So once we're up and running, we average right around 40 gallons per hour with this particular setup that we have here. Again, we're closing in on the last boil of the year this year. It's not been great, unfortunately. We added some more taps this year. We were hoping to see somewhere around 100 gallons of finished product. Like I said, so far we're right about 30. We made the decision about a week ago when everybody else was pulling their taps. We decided to stay in because we'd already done all the work of putting everything out there. We've got wood. We're set up, ready to go. So at this point, anything we can gain is a good thing. We were fortunate the last couple nights it actually got down into the mid-20s. Hello, Jackson. You're new? If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them for you. This is considered basically a large hobby size or a very, very small producer size setup here. Like I said, we can boil down about 40 gallons of sap an hour, and with the sugar content today, I tested it before, it's going to be about 50 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. We are in the Hudson Valley of New York. Basically western Ulster County. Yes, making syrup. You'll see me walk in and out. The wood is just outside the door of the sugar house, just outside the view of this camera. But the evaporator, we basically feed it very consistently every few minutes to keep as much flame going across the bottom of these pans as we can. So there's a lot of different options with evaporators. This is natural, as far as it's not a sealed evaporator with forced hot air, with forced air. So what a lot of the guys will do is they will get basically what they call an airtight arch, and they use a fan to force the air through, and then that blows the flame across the underside of these pans. Yes, we collect our own. Yep, we've got about 400 taps out right now. I think somewhere, if I'm being very technical, I think we got about 380 to 85. But every time I go out and count, I come up with a different number. So we say right about 400 because that's the easiest way to keep track of things. This is something that I used to do with my grandfather. He had a much smaller setup, but still ran a lot of taps, probably around 300. We've added a little bit. And he never had a setup quite like this. He used to do it on the old style flat pan. He would start the boil, and he would boil for 3 or 4 days straight, and then pull it off. This is kind of a continuous flow system, where outside we've got what we call the nurse tank, and that feeds the raw sap into our preheat hood. This is our preheat hood here. It's got a bunch of pipes that zigzag through, but that takes the sap. Right now it's about 38 degrees our sap is, and it's coming into that preheat hood. Once it flows into the back pan of the evaporator, it's running in at 180 to 190 degrees. So you might imagine that increases our productivity immensely. Is maple the only tree sap you can make syrup with? It's not, but it's the only one that we've made it with. There's folks around here who do both black walnut and birch syrup, and there's a couple others that you can do it with that I'm not real familiar with. We do have birch trees on the property. I've never messed with it. I've heard it's just a very different flavor. It's not sweet. It's used more for medicinal type stuff. And when everything is good with the sugar content in the maple sap, we do about 40 gallons of sap to 1 gallon of syrup. The birch is somewhere in the 80 gallons to 1 gallon, so it's very labor intensive, but it sells for a very high dollar amount. So today is actually a really nice day to boil. It's not super hot outside. It's not cloudy. It's nice and clear, which helps the evaporation rate quite a bit. We boil in all types of weather because we have to, but the evaporation rate is always much higher on nice, cool, clear days versus a warmer, rainy day. Yeah, birch makes syrup. I've never had it. I know some guys around here produce it, and they will sell it in, let's see if I have a small bottle. I don't have anything small enough to really show you what they sell it in, but usually the birch syrup is sold in somewhere from the 4 to 8 ounce bottle size, and our most popular size is either what we call the pancake flask or a quart jar, and I'll grab those in a second. I just got to throw some more wood on. making very dark syrup this year. That's just kind of what we've been given. So we make whatever we can. So these are basically, I'll walk up here to the camera. These are basically the three sizes that we sell the most of. That's a quart mason jar. Then this is an 8-ounce pancake flask, and that's a 12-ounce pancake flask. So those are really the three that we sell. There's all kinds of fancy jars, fancy glasses, but this is the most popular. Now you may have seen a lot of, I would say, local tourism type shops will have this type of glass, the maple leaf. Really nice for a gift, not super practical from our standpoint because these glasses cost around $4, sometimes $5 a piece. So the syrup that's in it, we actually don't make as much money when we bottle in this type of glass, and it's already an industry that you don't make a huge profit, especially where we are in the industry, which is a very, very small producer. We have tried, everything's a little dusty back here in my stash back here, but we have tried to do some different types of syrup a little bit, just as far as putting something like this. There's an actual cinnamon stick, if you can see it right here. There's a cinnamon stick in this syrup. So we bring it up to bottling temperature, put a cinnamon stick in it, and we hot bottle this cinnamon syrup, and it actually is really, really good. I'm very much a purist when it comes to maple syrup, but this cinnamon syrup is really good. Abby and I were sitting on the couch the other night, and I had just bottled a fresh batch. We usually bottle the cinnamon type syrup in really small batches. So I just bottled a fresh batch and wanted to try it. Usually we'll let it sit for about a week just to enhance that flavor a little bit. It needs at least a week in that bottle. And I had, if you've ever had Tillamook ice cream, or Tillamook I think, they do a peach ice cream, and I did peach ice cream with that cinnamon syrup on it, and it tasted exactly like peach pie. It was absolutely amazing. So that is definitely my new favorite ice cream with cinnamon maple syrup. So I guess one thing a lot of folks don't realize is that sap, which is what comes out of the tree, will actually spoil a lot like milk will spoil if it gets warm. And it has a similar sour consistency. If milk sours, it gets nasty, you don't want to drink it. Sap, when it comes out of the tree, should be very, very clear and basically have no taste. A little bit of a hint of sugar. You get a little bit of a mineral taste, but it should have basically no taste. And I had some the other day, I brought it here, and what I'll do, especially this time of year, later in the year, I will take a little cup, I keep a coffee cup kicking around here, and I'll take just a little bit of that raw sap and I will drink it, and that's a really good indicator of, is this stuff okay to boil and to mix with what's already in this evaporator, which is good. And I had a batch the other day that was just absolutely terrible. So we flushed everything. I had to rinse everything out and start fresh, just in the collection tanks. But if we had mixed it into here, we would have had gallons of syrup just bad from that mixture of the bad sap with what's already been in this evaporator and boiled down a bit. So this operation consumes a lot of wood. This is a wood-fired arch. The bottom part where the flame is what they call the arch, and the top part is the pans. We'll just talk about the arch for a minute. We consume a lot of firewood in this arch. They have propane-fired arches, oil-fired arches, and wood-fired. We do the wood because with the landscaping business, we get a lot of junk pine and junk hemlock. This is hemlock right here. You can see about the size that we split it. We try to split it about that size because that burns hot enough and fast enough to produce the heat and the flame that we need to run this operation. You can burn hardwood once you're into that, what they call the airtight arch, which is much more sealed. It's got a blower fan in the back. You can run your hardwood because your hardwood natural, like it is right now with no fan going, just doesn't put off quite enough heat and flame. It doesn't burn fast enough for the natural draft arch. I'll throw a couple pieces in once in a while when I need to walk around and do some things, whether I'm bottling or filtering. But we're getting very close to a draw here. And I draw off, I guess because how the camera is set, I guess left and right might be reversed. But as we look at the front of the evaporator, I actually draw off on the left side today. I'm not sure exactly how that will come across on the camera. But maple syrup is sometimes a little bit of a technical sport, as it were, if I can put it that way. I don't really want to call it a sport, but I don't know what else to call it. But it becomes a very technical hobby where you watch a lot of different things, make sure everything is running properly. You don't want to lose the boil. You don't want to go too low fluid in the back pan, because what will happen is there's fins in there, or what they call flues. And once it gets below that level, you can actually burn the back pan. You can do the same with the front. You can burn the front pan. And what you see me walking around here is, this is a hydrometer cup. It's warm. I always keep mine warm. There is hot water, basically condensation, from inside this hood that drips off both the front and the back corner of the hood. So I keep this in a bucket right there. Keeps it warm. That way it's not super cold. And we're going to do a test batch on this syrup here. I will do my best to show you how a hydrometer works. Very close. So we'll see if we can get close enough here so you can see it. This is the hydrometer. You can see the two red marks right here and then here. This upper one is marked at 59, and that's bricks, B-R-I-X, not B-R-I-C-K, B-R-I-X. And when we draw off, somebody's here. Oh, Abby's home. When we draw off hot, but it cools down a few degrees in the cup. So even right on here, these will say, see if you can see that, maybe. But this writing right here says hot test at 211 degrees. So when we draw off the evaporator, usually it's about 219, somewhere in that range. They figure it cools about 8 degrees from the time we draw it off till the time that we put this in and actually test it. So that's what we're going to do right now. My kids are here. They, much like me, have grown up around this stuff. They know it's hot. They know to be careful, but I will occasionally yell at them to be more careful. All right, so we got our hot syrup in this cup. We'll drop this in, and hopefully you can see that that red line is actually above the syrup. Now, the longer we let this sit in here, the hydrometer will actually lift up because the syrup is getting colder. But this is just a touch bath syrup, so we are going to do a little draw here off to the side. And what I have sitting here is called a draw-off tank. This one's quite old. I'm loaned from somebody. So let's grab this camera and bring it over here for a second. All right, here we go. So if you see those bubbles in there, that's syrup coming out of the front pan, and that is a very special thermometer. Basically, where it says 7, that is 219 degrees. And you can see right now it's about 221. But what I do with this particular setup, as you can see now, we just cracked it open. I'm drawing off very slow. My idea with this one is, and what has worked well for this particular setup, not for everybody's setup, but for this setup, is to do a slow draw. When we do that slow draw, like that, we'll let things catch up a little bit. This is all float driven. We do the slow draw. What it does is it works across, it's very hot, the front of this pan. The hot sap comes in here, it zigzags through, and then that was what you looked at over there. You can see by those bubbles, we've got a very, very sweet front pan right now. And this is the float box that we said before. You can see actually there's a little leaf sitting on it from things blowing around earlier. But this is the float box. It automatically holds the level where I want it to be in this front pan. So I can use the wing nut, either raise it or lower it a little bit. But you can see it auto-regulates everything for me. That way we don't have to think about it as much and constantly adjust things. So again, there's the front pan. That is a very, very sweet front pan. I'm gonna draw off a little bit more here. Do a little bit more of a fast draw just to pull some across. So what happened the other day is when we were cooling everything down, the front pan actually went to syrup while we were doing the cool down, which is not ideal, but I didn't want to draw off at that point. So here's the back pan, or the main evaporation happens. A little foamy right now. On this side of the evaporator, the way it's set up today is our hot sap into our syrup, our front pan, and our cold sap comes in up here, goes through that hood, comes out here as hot sap, and comes into that float box as hot sap. I'll give another little tour again in a minute, but I've got to get more wood on the stove. The later in the year we get, as the buds start to pop on these maple trees, the syrup doesn't smell. Hang on a second. I apologize for wiggling the camera. I gotta get it plugged in. There we are. The syrup doesn't smell quite as good as it did about a week ago. Doing a couple draws here just to get this everything flowing the way we want it to be. There. We've had mostly dark syrup this year. Actually, I think almost all dark syrup this year. I don't think we really had anything too awfully light. So for you dark syrup fans, it's going to be a good year for that. Those of you who like the light stuff, it's not going to be too much. Again, we burn mostly pine and hemlock. Every now and then I'll put a piece of hardwood in. Everything is running good. Hi, Echo. Dogs running around. One thing, if you're doing this at home, because you can do this in your own backyard, if you've got a couple maple trees, you can tap and boil inside your house. It produces a lot of steam, like I said, between 40 and 60 gallons of sap to create a gallon of syrup. But if you're doing a little bit, we did it many times. We put it in a couple gallon pot, boil it down, and get a little tiny bit of syrup. We do it with the kids usually. That way, we haven't done too much of that. Actually, we didn't do any of it with the kids with their own trees this year, just because we got tied up with other things. Hi. Hi, Joshua. So you can make maple syrup in your own house, your own home. Your home? Yeah. Again, if you've got any questions or comments, you type them in. I can read them across the bottom. Yeah. It's a little bit, whatever comes off today, I'm going to put in its own thing. It's a little bit strong. I guess that's how I would describe some of the late season syrup as strong. Because there's no, I don't want to say it's bad, it's not bad. But it definitely smells and tastes a little bit different than the earlier mid-season syrup. I tested what was in our holding tank or nurse tank today. I went out and collected some this morning. Basically, whatever ran over the last day and a half, we're boiling that down right now. Owen's out with UTV collecting from another set of tanks that we have, another collection point. But I tested what we brought in today. It was about 1.9, which isn't terrible. It's lower than I would like to see. We've not had a great sugar content this year, unfortunately. I tap only sugar maples, so we should be seeing somewhere in the 2 to 2.5 range. The 1.9 is not good. front of this gets pretty warm, as you may imagine. It takes well over an hour for the entire evaporator to get really, really hot. We get a good boil going usually after about 8 or 9 minutes, but between 8 and 10 minutes, we get a boil going. But it takes quite some time to get everything hot, because the pans are 6 feet long, and all the way back to the stack is about 6.5 or 7. And all of that is lined with fire bricks, so it takes quite a while for those to actually get up to temperature. I haven't tasted it yet. There. Yeah, you smell. Yeah. No, there's a little bit on the stove right now if you want to try it. So sometimes what we'll do when we have some sap that's questionable, other than I take a shot of it myself and just drink it raw, I will bring a couple cups of it inside and I'll boil it down on the stove, and then I'll do a taste test as well. I don't even bring it all the way to syrup. I just evaporate, say, 3/4 or so of it, and then I'll do a taste test, and that'll tell me for sure whether or not we've got good quality.
How long do you think it'll be going?
We've only got 110 gallons left, so 2 more hours. Ish. Assuming it continues to run tonight, I don't know if it's supposed to get cold or not. Just pulling wood out of the IBC tote, that's how we stack it, store it all, process it into IBC so I can bring it down here and grab a piece of wood. And it's something that always makes you jump, even if it's cold. That would not have been fun finding that if it was a little bit warmer. It's dead now, but kind of neat. Hello, Mr. Quick. Yeah, this will always make you jump whenever you see that. Set that over here. all kinds of neat finds over the course of the season. There we go. So we did try something new this year. We bought espresso beans and hot bottled the syrup in with the espresso beans. It's actually pretty good. It's kind of neat. The issue is it's hard to dump out. It's hard to dump the syrup out without the espresso bean coming with it. So I think we might look at doing something like that again, but putting espresso beans in the syrup hot, letting it sit that way for a couple weeks, and then bringing it back up to temperature, doing a hot bottle that way. So it won't have the espresso beans in it, but it still has the flavor. So Owen just got back from collecting what we call our level 3, and he brought 70 gallons of sap out of the woods and said everything is running, which is great. Again, not a good year, so we are taking every single little bit that we can get, as you might imagine. Hello, Allison from Oak Hill. How are you? We've been trying to experiment with different things with the syrup a little bit, not just doing just the pure syrup. It's still pure syrup, but we're doing the hot bottling with the cinnamon sticks and with the espresso beans. A lot of people have mentioned doing the vanilla bean in it as well. I am not a huge fan of that to begin with, so we'll see what happens with that. It's much of what we do is what we feel like doing, number one, but also what the demand is. So if there's a huge demand for something, then we'll look at doing that. But a year like this year, where we're basically going to sell out of all of our regular syrup, then we're not going to put a lot of effort into bringing something else in. So the one thing that we have been working on very consistently is getting our maple sugar candies down to a real science. So that's been a little bit trying, as it were, because I don't have a candy machine. So we do a small batch in the kitchen on the stove, which has been working. Definitely can't complain there, it has been working. We also messed around with a little bit and they're working on perfecting the granulated sugar, which is kind of fun. I'm looking forward to homemade cinnamon rolls with granulated maple sugar instead of brown sugar. So I'm hoping that that'll be a Saturday in the near future at our house. What are the boiling projections for today? We started with about 145. I pulled, some of that was from yesterday. I went in the back, I pulled out, I think about 60, which gave us the 145 to start. Owen just pulled in another 70. So we're a touch over 200. I had planned on boiling for 3 hours, but I might bring it all the way down. I'm not sure yet. With the warm weather and the fact that we keep it in food grade, but still a poly IBC tote, it spoils faster than if it were in a double wall insulated stainless. We did make arrangements earlier today to purchase a double wall stainless tank, which will be our new nurse tank for next year. So that'll be a nice upgrade. That'll hold our sap cold longer, and the colder the sap is, the less it goes bad fast. I'm sure that makes sense. It's a lot like milk, where if you left it outside, well, maybe not right now if you left it outside, but if you left it outside for a while, it would spoil, it would go bad and go sour. Sap does the exact same thing. Like I said, I tested the sugar content earlier. We were about 1.9. I think that should put me somewhere in a 46 to 1 ratio, I believe. I have to check my chart if I have one in here. But I don't see one in here. Oh, wait a minute. Nope, that's not it.
It's on its way up out there.
That's a good thing.
What do you want me to do?
If you want to work on the bed knife,
Oh, yeah.
that'd be great. I didn't get a chance to mess with that at all. So.
Yep.
Owen just checked in. He was mowing a couple fields today. We've started our spring cleanup. Kind of light spring cleanups, but just going around picking up sticks, walking the properties, making sure there's no big damage, cleaning up any trees, large branches that came down, things like that. I'm boiling pretty good today. I should definitely, at least hopefully, be somewhere in the 40 gallon an hour range, which is great. The other day we did break, I don't know if we broke a record, but we definitely did very well. We did 42 3/4 gallons an hour, but that was with one guy doing nothing but feeding and myself walking around monitoring everything. By myself, I usually average somewhere between 38 and 40 gallons an hour, which still, off of this particular setup, is very good. This is what they call a 2x6. So the total boil is 6 feet long, 2 feet wide. Syrup pan in the front is 2x2. The main evaporator in the back is 2x4. Usually a setup like this is rated for somewhere between 75 and 250 taps. Because we have the preheat hood, that adds about 100 taps to that rating. So they'll say this setup will handle, not necessarily easily, but will handle about 350 taps. We're closing in on that 400 mark, so we're definitely stretching the capacities of what we have here, but that basically just means it's more work for me. So if we went with a bigger arch, a bigger setup, we'd boil more gallons an hour, where right now I boil for 10 hours, we boil down 400 gallons. On a bigger setup, I could boil for 10 hours and boil down 600 gallons, or not have to boil for 10 hours, which is nice. It's very tiring, but I enjoy it. Basically what we're producing today, what was on the evaporator to begin with, we are going to be putting in its own spot. I'm not going to put it in the finisher filter canner. Going to keep this off to the side. This has, I can tell just from the smell, this is very, very strong syrup. This is more of what we would consider a cooking syrup or something like that. It will still absolutely taste good on pancakes, but it's too strong for almost everybody who would normally buy it from us. So what I try to do is we try to keep things just separated a little bit. The majority of the people who buy from us like the dark syrup. It's more flavorful. It has that strong maple flavor, so everybody likes that. But every now and then you'll get a batch like today where the description is more of a molasses flavor. So, but it is very good for cooking. So we've got, what Owen just brought out of the woods, about 215 gallons. If we average the 40 gallons an hour, we figure we're going to boil off 200 gallons in 5 hours from the time I lit the fire. And then we've got about a 15-gallon cool down. This thing takes well over an hour to cool down, and it'll continue to steam off for several hours. So we usually like 15 to 20 gallons of reserve to allow the cool down. So if we boil 200 gallons, we've still got 15 left in the tank. That'll bring us right down to zero, and we'll be able to start tomorrow fresh. I was thinking with I talked to Damien. He's going to do 250 of the round labels, the small ones, and then 250 bigger ones. And it was the same price whether we did 250 or 500 per label.
Is that just like one circular outside?
No, I figured the other ones would go in pancake jars too. They look nice for any of them because we could write on them what they are. So if you have any questions or comments, if you type them across the bottom, or type them, I can see them across the bottom of the screen. I will do my best to answer. So I was talking earlier about the dark syrup, the light syrup. This is actually very dark syrup. Can't really, maybe. No, you gotta put up the sun to see through it. This is really dark, but the flavor on this stuff was incredible the other day. So while it was really dark, it wasn't bitter, no off taste, nothing like that. It was amazing. And we had somebody the other day stop in and they wanted light syrup, and we were able to do that. Like I said, we don't have a lot, but we were able to fill their wish list there a little bit.
You have water out here?
My water might be gone. Both of these are a little dusty from sitting out here. But we've got a light syrup and a dark syrup. And you can see the difference. I will take this every single day. So if you're in New York State, it is Maple Weekend this weekend. It was last weekend, it is again this weekend. So if you search on Google Maple Weekend New York State or New York State Maple Weekend, something like that, it'll come up with a whole bunch of locations that do open houses. I know our friends up at Shaver Hill are doing, this is empty now, thank you, are doing an open house. I believe they do a pancake breakfast with their own syrup as part of the open house, which is pretty cool. Huh? Nah. I had, well, I probably don't need more, I just want some. But Maple Weekend is happening again Saturday and Sunday. We may be boiling Saturday, I'm not sure. If we do, we'll put our little sign out by the road, and the kids sell syrup out there along the road, which people love to stop and chat with the kids and then get a little tour of the sugar house here. As I mentioned early on in the live, and then maybe a couple times since, it's not been a great year production-wise. Only about 30 gallons, plus whatever we've drawn off today, which has not been much yet. And that is, from what I've heard, very much the case in our area at least. It was not a good year. A lot of guys who often produce 250 gallons have only produced 150 gallons, things like that. But I'm going to put this on mute for a couple minutes. We just had a visitor show up, and let me hit the mute button. Alright, bring our sound back on. We almost had a little disaster. Almost. I got chatting with somebody and lost track of the front pan completely. Started getting a little caramel smell here. Got a pretty good amount of syrup in the front pan, which is not ideal. So we're trying to get that drawn across properly now. That's why I pulled the hood off the front, just so I could see exactly what was going on. That's why you should always watch everything when you're in here. Alright, got things evened out a little bit. Good. Whew. Things started to smell a little weird. And I realized that I had gone quite a ways past syrup on this front pan, and if you're not careful, you can burn your pan, and that's an expensive proposition. Number one. Number two, it's not exactly ideal because I can't just order a replacement pan and have it here tomorrow. So I was at a friend's sugar house the other day, and he said there's 3 types of sugar guys, or maple syrup makers. He said the guys who have already burned their pans once, the guys who are gonna burn their pans, and the ones who are lying about it. So, disaster averted there. That was almost really not good, but we're getting there. So what had happened is, rather than it being 219 in the front pan, which is in this divider right here, this most recent, or the closest to me divider in the pan, it was up about 227. So it was much higher than it should have been. All right. Well, I can breathe again. That was a friend of ours that stopped, driving by and saw the smoke coming up from behind the garage. I just put a bunch of pine on, which tends to put out a nice black smoke, especially when it's been cut green and dried like this was. It's got all that pitch in it. And yeah, that smoke's pretty good. So
That's white out. Look at the difference there.
yeah, wow, crazy, isn't it?
That's the side I was running on.
Yep.
That was clean, busted out with all the extras.
Yeah.
Put some penetrating oil in there.
Sorry. That'll work. That'll make a difference.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's fine.
I'm gonna make arrangements to ship out the other knives.
Yeah, that's just how it works.
Yes. Yep. All right.
Daddy,
Daniel.
there's so much smoke on outside.
There's so much smoke.
Yeah, no one's flooded.
That's good, right?
Yes.
Means the fire's going.
Open the door, love.
Ah.
Oh.
So a lot of this syrup that we're making today is going to be put off to the side, labeled either for our own use or basically for cooking. It's a very strong flavor today. I don't know if this is in frame or not, maybe barely in frame. I'm just swapping out this filter. So we run one thick filter, one Orlon filter, and anywhere from 3 to 5 pre-filters. This is a pre-filter right now I'm changing out. And that's a very thin filter. You can kind of see, maybe, you can kind of see how dark this is over here. It's filtering out all the sugar sand. Did a lot of that this year, unfortunately, but right now we basically do a full gravity filter type system. Working on getting a vacuum filter system set up, but we don't do the filter press, which is a diatomaceous earth. I'm not necessarily against that. We don't have that, as it's a larger expense for a small operation.
Oh, yeah.
One of the nice things with our setup here is the condensation from the hood is collected both in the front corner and the back corner of this evaporator. And I collect it in 5-gallon buckets, and that allows me nice hot water that we can clean these filters with. And it's distilled water, and that just sucks the dirt right out of the filters for less than, lack of a better way to phrase it. This is where it's nice to have another hand, somebody just to watch things, change filters, or put wood in the stove. But we make it work. Thing that we have is clean spoons, clean plastic spoons, and I will occasionally just take a test of how it tastes. One of the nice things about being in the sugar house. Just so I can kind of monitor flavor. Like I said, some of this stuff is going to be basically for cooking tonight. But if it ends up tasting better than I expect, then we'll mark it differently. Still tastes very good, but it's very, very strong. So I was right with my assumption that it's going to be cooking. James, I can see you typed something, but I'll go read it in a second when I get over there. Some of the producers are doing bourbon barrel aging with their syrup. This would actually probably be quite good for that. You know, you can see how dirty that is. That's your filter collecting all that sand and settling. We filter that out, and that's what gives you a much more clear syrup. Unfortunately, ours is not crystal clear. But, and that's after quick rinse. A lot different. What you can do, what the old timers used to do, is filter it through a simple cotton something, whether it's a clean new pillowcase or a t-shirt, anything like that. The old timers used to do a lot of. And that worked quite well as far as just making sure there was no extra dust or bark or anything like that in the syrup. I remember my grandfather used to do that, and then he would let it settle. So we'd have the syrup filter through basically that clean cotton, and then he would let it settle for a couple weeks, and everything would settle at the bottom and give a nice, really nice clear syrup. Worked great. Kind of an old school way to do it, but it definitely worked. So every now and then, you see me walk around with a dropper, a small dropper. It's essentially a vegetable oil that we drip in, just a couple drips, about every half an hour. This bottle has, you would use this entire bottle in about 4 years. So you don't put very much in, just a drip once in a while. But what that does is that helps the foam, because as this is boiling, it produces a lot of foam. And when you produce foam, you lose your evaporation rate. All right, front pan's back where it should be. Boiling very nicely now. Get some more wood on this fire. Stop sampling the candy. But it's so good. So as I was saying, we did the granulated sugar thing. That came out amazing. Some of it didn't get quite as loose as I wanted it to. It still stayed just a little bit sticky. It was still loose and granulated, but it was a little bit sticky, so I'm not sure what we did wrong with that. Very edible and an awesome product for sure. But it just didn't end up quite the way I wanted it to end up. We've got a little mason jar vacuum sealer. So we've been using that for the granulated, because you can't heat that back up and then can it. So we'll put it in a sterile mason jar, put that lid on it, and then do a vacuum seal. That's been working pretty good. The candy is a little bit difficult because the longer it sits, the harder the candies get. So, a little bit difficult, I say, but the other side of it is if you just keep eating it, then it won't go bad. hoping and looking into, but definitely hoping to purchase a cotton candy machine or maple cotton candy. I don't know if that will be this year or if we will look at that next year. I think had we made a lot of syrup this year, we would have looked at something like that. But since we're already going to be significantly down in money coming in, just because there wasn't enough there to sell a whole lot of, we're going to be fairly cautious with what we actually spend money on this year with that. Hello. I'd go ahead and stop in and make sure everything was good. A little camera shy here. All right. Yeah, I'm very excited for the cotton candy. I love maple cotton candy. And we can get it right now, but it's in a little tiny tub. So it feels like it's only 2 or 3 bites of it. And if we were able to basically make it for events, we'd be right there making it and selling it in the actual full-size cotton candy bags, which is a lot of fun. I feel like that would be a pretty hot item at a lot of these smaller town events. We've got a nice boil going on. When the neighbors stopped, he thought my garage was on fire. We boil alongside the garage here. So as you come up over the hill, you don't see the smokestack, but it pushes out a very dark, sometimes black smoke. So he thought the garage was on fire. On the bright side, at least he stopped. They care enough to stop. That's a good thing. Good, that's what do well. That's what I wanted to see. The final filter is an Orlon filter. It used to be wool. They did away with that for the most part. Again, being a traditionalist myself, I think that the wool filter really did a good job. I don't know why they decided not to use them anymore, but they did. So. We'll do a quick taste test again, see where we're at. We spill all kinds of sweet stuff in here, all kinds of syrup in here. And once I clean up for the night, there's all little syrup on the one cinder block where this tank sits, and the dog comes in here and absolutely loves to just lick the cinder block. Flavor's still okay. Early in the year, you don't have to worry about where your flavor is going to be. Here, if you get any of the, I don't know what the technical term is, but I call it buddy, B-U-D-D-Y, buddy, because it's the flavor that comes out once the buds on the maple trees really start to pop. So because we don't tap any red maple, we only tap sugar maples, I get a couple weeks longer than a lot of other people do who will tap the red maples, because the reds always pop sooner. Got an end of season smell, but the flavor is still good, so we'll take that. Smell is different.
Yeah. It's more potent than.
Yep. Well, Melissa asked me if we would look at taking all the dead trees down the front of her property. Fletcher.
Fletcher, yeah.
Yeah. I marked them today. There's 35.
There's some sapwood.
Yeah. So I give a price on that, but they're all either almost dead or dead. 35 of them. That's it. That's enough to almost run the season next year.
Yeah. Well, there's some sapwood.
Yeah.
Assuming we get a season next year.
Yeah. Well, if we do, we do. If we don't, we don't. We should. Almost burned the front pan before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was talking with the guy and just lost track of what was going on. All that got pumped up, right? The whole
Yeah,
bed?
it's empty.
Okay.
I realize how cold it is outside. It's like, oh, here, it feels good in here.
A little warm in here, but yeah. Yep.
Well, I'm chilled from that.
Voting cotton candy this year. Everybody votes cotton candy this year. Be right back. I just gotta walk around quick and check on a couple things. I'm gonna grab a pot from inside and have Abby boil the bottom of the hill down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good to go.
Yeah. I'm doing my gloves. Somewhere. Nope.
Alright, the rest of the day tomorrow at Delani's finishing that fill cut.
That was my thought, yeah.
Yeah.
I won't have you collect anything in the morning, we'll just run,
We'll go straight there.
go straight there, yep.
I plan on leaving that trailer attached up at the property because it's not gonna rain tonight
Yep,
or anything.
yeah, that works for me.
I did change the air filter out in that
Oh,
by
good.
this morning.
Yep.
Yeah, today you get started early over there, and I'm supposed to go over there and meet Joe. And look at his deal exactly, he didn't want to cut the same way as we did last year.
What I do with that?
Nothing. No, he just wants it different.
Oh.
They want different areas cut or something.
Right, right. If I'm over there, then you can show me.
Well, that was my thought, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the level 2, other than the bucket tree, maybe just about done.
Okay.
I'm gonna fire this thing up to 50 or 60 gallons at this point.
Right, and then whatever's in there, I'm assuming you're gonna just draw it all off and boil it out inside.
Yeah, basically. What you can do is draw off the back,
Yeah.
fill it with water,
Yeah.
and boil the front. So what I did last year is I ran this right down to basically steam point,
Yeah.
stopped feeding it, steamed it right down to the top of the flume, drained it into a couple 5-gallon buckets, filled the back with water, boiled it, and just kept dumping in the front.
I see.
It just boils way faster than inside,
I'm sure.
so,
It's how many degrees hotter?
yeah. Well, just a much bigger area.
How's your live stream going?
Oh, not bad. Figured fire up the live stream because I've only done one and it didn't really, I had to mute it early on because people showed up, so.
Yeah.
That is some incredibly thick syrup that's in that draw tank right now.
Sure not telling me what it was. Firewood in there for you?
That was just one of the wet coats that we used to walk.
I figure if I put it in there, I'll sneak 1 or 2 out of there and burn it off.
Right, most dry, helping it dry out.
It does, yeah, it helps it dry out. I'm not running crazy high efficient, but I was contemplating adding a 4-foot section to stack.
Oh yeah?
Because if I add a 4-foot section to stack, it increases the draft, and I can crack the door lower, which theoretically would mean better draft, lower door, hopefully not glow the door quite so cherry red, and throw the heat in here where it needs to be,
Right.
which also means less wood.
You can be running it more efficient.
Yeah, yeah. So I was at the big one the other day. He puts in wood about every 10 minutes.
I see.
He burned, well, his is huge, but he burned maybe less than half of a tote of hardwood for over 400 gallons.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So a tote would get him 800 gallons, where the tote gets us 2.
CROing it?
Yes, but that's after the RO.
Okay.
So he started with 1,000 gallons, RO'd down to 400. Fired it up at 7:30. I pulled in at 7:30, there was no oil. Took him a while to get everything going. He essentially boiled for an hour and 10 minutes and then cooled down, and that was the 400 gallons gone.
Wow.
With the warm up, actual boil and cool down was 2 hours and he was done.
So what you're saying is the bigger you go, the more efficient they get?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But it's different. He's got a big blower. He's got all kinds of other stuff. So there's more than just the wood being consumed.
Right.
Here we got a couple lights and that's it. So
And you're fairly off grid with this setup.
right. Yeah, this setup could be run completely off grid.
Which is nice.
Yes, it is. So what you put in there, we had 215. So I boiled down. I didn't think you were going to come back with 70 gallons, so that's good.
Yeah, well, the buckets down there were halfway full, now they were 3/4 when I went back.
Okay, so they did break 3, which is good.
Yeah.
I didn't look at the weather for tonight. If it gets cold again in a couple days, then we'll. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just going to keep going until it tells me I can't.
Low tonight's gonna be 35.
35, so it will probably seep all night. When's the next freeze?
Tomorrow the low will be 35. Might get cold enough down there. Then the next freeze is gonna be Tuesday. It'll be 31,
All right.
Wednesday 27.
So we might have another couple small runs next week.
Yeah, but anything you get over this weekend, you're gonna have to dump because Saturday's gonna be 71 degrees.
Yeah, we're gonna boil anything we get. We're gonna boil instantly at this point.
Yeah. That is gonna be warm.
We're gonna have to. The stainless stock tank is gonna come at some point next week.
Okay, you got it?
Yes. I don't have it, but yeah.
Holy cow, Highlands, it's gonna be almost 78.
On Saturday?
Yeah.
Really?
Finally run out of stuff?
Almost. Almost. There we go. I've got the powder I can put in, but I prefer this.
Yeah, I know you don't like the powder stuff.
Yep. I prefer what I understand.
Right.
Even though if they broke the powder down to you, it's probably fine.
What?
If they broke down what was in the powder to you, it's probably
Oh,
fine.
yeah. I don't know, it's kosher.
Yeah, I smell it now. It's very distinctive.
Yeah.
Syrup smell.
Yep, doesn't smell different. The funny thing is, the fresh sap that's now flowing in that we collected today
Yeah.
is pushing stuff lighter.
Really?
Yep. So all this dark that's been coming off was what was in the back pan over the last, since the last boils.
You're right.
And
I'm wiping my foam lens off because that one maple thing I was putting together, I never had footage of it drawing off.
oh,
My phone is so utterly
Disgusting from all of that stuff that was floating around today.
yep.
Wind was not helping there.
No.
One way it was fine, the other way, I'm getting covered.
Woo, like chocolate syrup. So, for the couple people that are watching, that red mark, if you can see, there we go. And it sits just above, can you see it? There you go, sits just above the liquid, so that is syrup. Doesn't taste bad though. I actually tasted this before I even drew it off earlier. It's very strong, but it's not.
Tastes like the stuff we usually use for cooking. Or smells like it.
For what?
Cooking.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing is we're going to draw all this through. There's enough up there to push all this through today. And then the fresh stuff is going to be better, actually.
Mm.
Needs to come up. Pan levels get low.
You want me to depress the thingy?
No, that's all right. It's flowing in.
Oh.
Just needs to catch up. Everything is flowing, so it's good. Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna go crazy late tonight. The goal is to just boil what we had, and then we brought more in. So
That's what Marty wants. I don't know how we're gonna set it up, but we're gonna be here to figure it out.
So he's gonna clean it out. He's gonna clean the tank out. Tomorrow's Friday, Saturday or Monday, and then I'll go over and pick it up. Grant had suggested putting it up on the back hill and running the gravity up from up there.
That's what one height, I think we do a couple 6x6. We do a couple 6x6. We can get up high and off the back roof. It's like a little funny, but I don't know what else to do, so.
Build a water tower?
Basically, yeah, we're basically gonna build a water tower. So,
If you redneck one though, I don't like to use pallet wood, but that would be a whole nother level.
well, I was actually thinking we could probably mill the wood that we're gonna use for it,
That's true.
right?
We
So
still
could-
do need
we could
fireplace on
film, we could film the redneck water tower.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, especially if you can see it from the road.
You'll be able to, it's gonna be pretty cool.
You have an actual legit sturdy ladder to climb up on it, and
Oh yeah, like a real thing,
not
yeah.
what's back there that I kicked over today when I tried to fill it.
Well,
Well,
if we could get it up to, because right now it's where is it? Halfway up that second window.
yeah, pretty much.
But if we were able to get the tank bottom at the top of about 6 or 8 inches above the door,
Yeah,
that would give us a little bit more,
just a little bit more gravity.
a little more
down.
gravity where we could probably, we could, number one, we could raise where the feed in is, so I don't hit my head.
Right.
And secondly, we could run an actual house filter too.
Yeah.
So we could run the spin down on the house filter.
Right. Yeah, that'd be nice because that would really filter stuff out of it. Would that mess with the sugar at all coming through? Yeah, it's a little hot now. Get in there.
This looks like it's definitely done decent at keeping the bugs out.
Yeah. Yep. Bugs and bark and whatever.
Nastiness that gets in there.
Yep. Runs pretty good. The only thing is it does affect the flow a little bit. Not a lot, but enough to where it's not quite as fast as it used as I would like it to be.
Right.
But overall it does pretty good.
One thing too, this was the only one they had on, like the one we had on our house.
Probably a lot bigger.
That much larger,
Yeah.
much bigger canister
Yeah.
on it. So you could, if you're gonna redo this, you could upgrade it to a bigger size.
Yeah, because if we can get up to the bottom of the tank where the buckets are,
Yeah.
that would give us a 1.5 foot increase in head pressure, which would be good. glad we didn't sell everything from last year.
Yeah. We're gonna need it.
Shaver Hill told me he's made 4,100 gallons so far this year.
Of syrup or?
Syrup.
Okay. It's a lot,
They
but
need to be at least 7,000.
right for what they
Yeah.
do.
They're not done yet though. Their trees are still running pretty good. They're significantly colder than we are.
Right.
But I hear it spitting. Putting the filter on the end of the fill hose has helped out a lot too.
Yeah. Okay, next year we'll figure that out so we don't drag that thing down every time we carry up the sock on the end of it.
Yeah, we'll get more every year. We do a little better with it.
Yeah.
There's a lot more trees in there that we're not tapping too,
Oh, there's tons.
so we'll get that all figured out hopefully.
If we're not doing anything in November, December, or something
Right.
next year after fall cleanups are done.
Yep, go back in there and get some work done.
Clear some stuff out, actually run some lines and things. And
I don't mind the multiple collection points if we have to do it, but
Definitely be nice for one big one.
right.
That little trash can run that I put down there when you were boiling heavily that one day, that's definitely provided a lot.
Yeah. Yep, yeah, because that was tapped in after that 70-degree day.
Yeah.
So I was actually looking at the weather, wondering if I should pull all the taps from the top along the field, and maybe, I mean, this one is not involved with that run.
Right.
But pull everything along the field, because they're warm and they're gonna start budding shortly, if not already. And kind of go in level 3 and do another 20 or 30 taps just to see what happens. But
Right.
at this point, you're just trying to
Squeak anything. you can
capture
squeak
what's not
out.
there, and I don't really have time for that either, so.
If we had tons of buckets, I could definitely get a
Yeah.
lot more, but
Yep. Yeah, any of those we can use.
what do you say?
Any of the white ones
Yeah.
we can use for double trees.
I was even just setting up like 3 or 4 into one bucket in a few
Yeah.
places.
That's fine too. Oh, the door's glowing. Look at that. Yeah, there it goes. That's the door glowing with it only on one notch, right?
Yeah.
No,
Two
notch,
notches.
two notches. Yep. So that means the wood is on point.
That's good.
Yep.
For that disaster we had
Oh.
with the other stuff.
The hardest thing was there wasn't even good wood down here. It was just that.
Right.
Oh, did you see what we found?
Oh, where was that?
In the wood pile.
Really?
I grabbed it and made me jump, even though it's 40 degrees out.
Right. I found a whole nest once in
The lid?
yeah.
Yep.
You can imagine how I reacted to that after picking it off. Hopefully.
Dogs beating up on each other. Yeah, it's looking good. It'll get a lot more efficient than what we got going on right now.
No. I mean, if you want me to start continually feeding the fire, I can.
We'll set it and get some air sometimes, so it's good to
Ah.
flush, but.
So a little steep.
Yeah. I'm wondering how leaky that one part on the rail gasket is. Scary thing is it's $7,000 for just the two pans.
That's so expensive.
And we gotta do it. Yeah, so these two pans alone is like 6,800, no, 6,500 plus tax. And that's not this.
Yeah,
That is $4,000. Because of all the stuff in it.
right. Yeah, 'cause it's got the preheat.
Yeah, painful. Very painful. All right, any questions or comments? Feel free to ask them. I am monitoring the bottom of the screen there.
All right, you're going this over there?
Yeah. What's up? That was the one I done for you. Yeah. No, that one worked. Yeah. Now we had that and the Ego running on Ryan last year. Well, the days I had with the rather than yes. That's pretty good up here.
Was it? Pouring in. Pouring in. Tell you what, all that wood that's slated for log,
Yeah.
split all that stuff into this firewood. That'd be some real premium firewood
Oh, I'm sure.
for this thing. shower and it's all done tonight.
Shower and get all the grit and
Yeah.
dust off of me after today.
That time of year again.
Oh yeah. Well, field mowing is always worse.
It is, although I just kind of like doing it this time of year, it's like,
Yeah, I don't mind it, and I also like it too.
you're double done it.
Yeah, I've been double time the whole thing.
Does it make sense to take 5 minutes to start the blades?
They're doing okay. Yeah, they're not bad. I haven't did anything. I checked them. They're fine. They're not bent or anything. In fact, they look really nice. Stuff that's done. Nice part with it too, don't have to worry about anything that's landmines that are out there. So I did that quite a few times last year.
Yeah, hit the brush off.
And on
Take
zero,
it the other way back.
yeah, when you're coming back, that's when you start looking out for the clouds.
What are you doing?
I'm just looking.
You guys tell me how this happened sidewalk?
No.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
It's 60 degrees on Saturday. I got half mine to go up to Shaver Hill just because. For their open house. 'Cause we're not gonna be boiling, not if it's that hot. Not unless it runs Friday night.
Not 60, 70, 72 here.
That's what you said?
Yes, here. 78 in Highland. Then it drops back down to the 40s.
Yeah. Well, it's that time of year, but still, it's. See the new vacuum part?
Oh, is that what that's for?
Yep. It's for vacuum for the canner.
Hey, it just hooks up to your shop vac?
Basically, it'd work better on a DeWalt one. See, it's got the little,
Yeah.
so I gotta make an adapter for it, but
Probably what will work really well for is all one of those Harbor Freight vacuum pumps.
maybe. They're kind of made, like our shop vac is actually too powerful, pulls it through too fast.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
you want a more,
Not the vacuum
even.
pump then.
what's the, I'd have to look at the vacuum pump. That might work for a,
Well, so a vacuum pump is what you'd be using if you did vacuum lines on Maple. Essentially,
that's what I meant.
It's, I believe theirs will pull 27 inches of mercury.
Okay.
30 inches of mercury, 31, sorry, is a complete vacuum, so complete space.
Gotcha.
I believe it's 31.
Been talking with the guys about the vacuum because if you had vacuum, like last night, how cold it got,
Yeah.
and then you got your vacuum today, it will run and produce like it regularly would all night long.
Right.
So it'll continue to vacuum out of the tree.
Yeah.
So
I would assume though you probably need a little bit more beefy vacuum pump that's just meant to run longer.
probably. Yeah, they
Vac-
do different stuff and there's no power down there, so that's the problem too.
Yeah.
Dang, you're hitting the camera. Careful.
Vacuum pumps are it's essentially a piston that's driven by a motor. Yep. They drive it faster than that. The biggest issue with them is they get hot, so you gotta have cooling on them.
Yeah, so there's ones that are made just for maple.
I'm sure, but they probably have nice big radiators on them to cool it down. Look at that.
Let me just get up through. Well, my teeth are much stronger than that hot water.
That's a good one. Could use that one.
I think what happened is I had a few left, but I ran out of spiles.
Oh, that's right, yeah. I ended up finding those files. I don't like those plastic files.
don't like them?
Nope, there's several of them that are actually wiggling in the tree.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I don't like those files at all. I like the fact that lid slides through them. I like that old style. But,
That's nice, but
yep.
not if it's doing that.
I'll have to look at what we can find, something similar, but
It's metal. Do they still make like modern metal ones for those lids?
I have to look. I'm wondering if maybe it should, instead of a 5/16, it should have been a 4/16. A little bit smaller, and it would have sealed. I'll have to look at that, but
Gotcha.
on the off chance they were 1/4 inch, but I don't think they were. They're
I
holding
like-
in okay, but there's a couple of them as it gets windy that it does this.
Yeah, I've
and
noticed on the trees it's a little wet. On the
Yeah.
bark.
Yep, so any of that means that it wasn't sealed quite properly.
That's blowing.
Lower it a little bit.
Do you want all the heat to go out, Daddy?
Right now.
Every time it's too long. But only really in Daddy's shop. I can't choose.
Run it in very consistently.
That's good.
I dropped that stupid dripper bottle like 3 or 4 times this year too.
Oh no.
So if you look at how much has been used, it's actually about half that because of how many times I dropped it.
Right. Sometimes it's falling over.
Yeah. Picture like. So ask Mommy how that stuff is doing inside, alright?
Oh, you can't eat that here. It's dirty.
Yeah. That's why the lid's on, to keep the dust out.
Oh, you said it tastes, it smells kind of sour. I said it smelled fun. All I want is some food.
Whatever the end of the boil is in there in 5 minutes. So that's what we're talking about.
Okay. Iffy.
Iffy. Look out, Dan.
Well, much more than my foot.
Yeah, very iffy. It's not bad, like it didn't go bad because it was warm, it's just kind of buddy. I told Abby, I feel like this front pan is not as level as it should be.
It's not flowing through.
Because when I pull off of this side, it flows really, really nice.
I see.
And pulling off of this side, it's not flowing in the way it should. Yep. We're basically down to have drawn off everything that was here. At this point, maybe a little bit mixed in that was here from when I started the boil, but most of it's the fresh stuff put in it today. Yeah, we're under 100, we're below 95. 120 is through. Which means the whole back pan has pushed everything from the back into the front.
Right, now it's all new stuff in there.
What are you doing? You don't know? Wandering? Wandering?
That's a lot of syrup.
There's a lot of syrup.
You're lucky.
Mm.
And it's almost at 7.
This what?
It's almost at 7 too.
Oh, it's almost at 7 again? Yeah. Now I know what you're talking about.
And that.
Yes, very hot, burns. Yeah,
It hurts you a little.
it hurts quite a bit.
You heard it actually. The water that cooled down. And what if this gets too much pressure and it dumps the bucket?
What? You won't melt the buckets. Not touching it, right? Yeah, if it touches it, it'll melt the bucket.
There's so much air in there that it's bumping. That's funny. But, yeah, I don't even know how to clean up this.
You're yelling in my ear. Right? Yeah.
That's moving out pretty fast.
Yeah, the problem is now the main filter's clogged. Stay back. This is very, very hot. Right? This is very hot, right? Yeah, this is very hot, so stay back.
That's a lot of sand.
Stay back.
That's a lot of sand in the bucket. In that, right? That's not much. It's not there.
try it? Iffy.
Oh no. It's very sweet. It's not sour. It doesn't. It's like
Weird.
yeah.
That tastes it.
Bring some in, let the kids boil it down. In the collection tank at the bottom of the hill here.
It's not on the spoon anymore.
And what's inside?
It's inside.
Can you mix it?
Can you what?
Have it mix it?
Inside?
Yeah.
No. Like give them a big pot full or give them...
What?
Do you have a big pot full or just a little one?
Another little box.
Need some water.
Can't right now. Oil.
You want me to feed while you're working the filters?
So I'm trying to not have the whole front pan turn to syrup while I'm changing filters.
Oh, gotcha.
You could throw a couple pieces on once in a while though. That'd be helpful.
Yeah, you didn't ask, so I didn't want to just start chucking stuff in there like I was the other time.
It's straight the way it is. That'll be fun to figure out. Need a bigger sugar house.
Running out of space to put things.
Yeah.
Assuming you want me to hold off until you move those things to syrup.
Yeah, let me get that out of the way. That'll be a inside the house bucket right there.
Gotcha. I'm gonna feed, okay?
Yep. surf in that filter.
I'm sure. Just making sure.
Making sure you're not on fire.
No, making sure my pants aren't melting. These aren't the ideal ones for doing this.
Oh, right. No melting pants today.
Yeah. Especially since these ones don't have any holes in them yet. These are new.
Then definitely none of that.
Yeah.
What? Yep, in the back.
Right there. Pumping it up into the pot is probably not going to be the greatest.
It's probably gonna be the easiest way to do it, unfortunately.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go just hold back so it should be good for a minute.
It's probably terrible hard to do that, you know, just with a little. Exactly, yeah. The bottom of the Nova. Thank you.
Figure rather than dumping it, the kids are like it, so
Yeah.
may as well let them have that. All right, let me grab this quick.
What's up?
So, just trying to keep things separate, but there's a bunch. It was up to probably about there, but I cleaned all the filters and just put it in the regular stainless pot. We'll bring this inside and can this tonight. But pretty good stuff there. Couple more gallons, 2.5 maybe. So we'll bring that in tonight. We'll can that inside rather than out here, because this is actually the filter canner, but changing things around a little bit. There we go. Owen's feeding the fire for me while I'm doing all the other stuff. So that was really nice and dark. The flavor of that's still really good. This stuff that we're going to draw up now, the flavor has changed a little bit. So like I said, we're trying to keep things separated a little bit based off the flavor. Because if you introduce off flavor into good flavor, you ruin it. You ruin the good flavor stuff. I'm going to push that float down on this side a little bit. Yeah. Just wash all of our filters, change everything over.
How long do you want me to hold the cork?
That's good.
Probably next weekend I will have that maple thing cut together.
Okay, cool.
I plan to do that while I'm sitting around moping with my wisdom teeth out.
Hopefully yours are much better than mine.
Oh, I'm hoping so.
Like I said, even mine, it wasn't fun, but it wasn't as bad as everybody kept telling me it was going to
Nah.
be. But I also just
Well, I think the worst part for you is no eating.
yeah. All right, I'm moving right along here. I can take over that way you don't tell me.
No, it's good. That's not what's bothering me. It's all the stuff that went down my pants
Oh.
today, which is so itchy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, field mowing.
Yep. Not bad though. I had fun today.
Good. Better than yesterday.
Nice, enjoyable day today.
Yep.
That and it's always fun exploring new fields on a zero that I've never been on. I gotta get in if you need.
That's all right.
I don't mind it. I like it.
I know.
That being said, I will have to head out in a little bit.
I figured.
Because,
Are the Nippins still around, or
no, they headed out
going
yesterday.
back home?
Yeah. Well, or did something else. I'm not sure.
Somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do like them, but man, my kids are crazy.
Young kids are always crazy. My kids are crazy.
Because they're almost as nuts as yours.
All right. Hello. Hi.
Come here. You're so smart, not dumb.
All right. We boiled down over 100 gallons today. Let's see where we're at. In this weather, we're trying to boil basically as soon as we get it, or else it's spoiling. We're down to 75 gallons, so we boiled about 100, 140. We found out that the stuff on our back hill has started to change flavor quite a bit, so we're going to end up not collecting off the back hill anymore. That's in its own run, which is good. So it's very easy to just shut that off and be done with it. But the flavor changes once the buds really start to swell, and they have started to do that in the last couple days. So loses the nice maple flavor and gets kind of strong and sometimes bitter.
Oh, are you gonna have next year?
Huh?
Are you gonna have that next year?
Yeah. Next year we'll do it again.
Hopefully next year we get a nice.
Hopefully next year's a wonderful year.
Hopefully we get a nice good winter and it's perfect temperature all spring.
There you can tell that.
Well, my father told me to tell you to eat your puppy more.
Oh, because she's scrawny.
Yes.
Scrawny pup.
And I responded by saying that yes, I just want to look like our fat dogs.
The German Shepherds is better for it to be on the lean side because then the hips last longer.
No, I know. That's what you said with Roche.
Yeah. She's done pretty good. They're starting to wear now, though.
So we'll see. If I end up renting from Westland, then I may be getting a pet eventually.
Goldfish.
No, I actually wanted to adopt a red fox from one of the adoption places.
Oh. That'd be fun.
But Hochul made those illegal.
Okay. Well, you know.
Every,
Take away all the good fun.
everywhere else but New York, they're legal. Get this, it's still on crocodiles here.
Yeah. Crocodiles make great pets.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure Aunt Debbie has a few crocodiles
She probably does.
as pets. To be fair, she does live in Florida over there. Daddy,
What?
why is the inside spatula out here for the burgers?
I needed it.
Okay.
Alright. I just gotta get that down so I can get here with enough brains tomorrow around here.
Yep, just send me a, yeah, that's fine. Yep, just send me a text if you're on your way or whatever, just so I know. So, more than the fact that it's worth that when you get here, it's more of like, why is there nothing here? I'll be direct somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Move. Move. Look out, puppy.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yep.
I gotta move the great truck into the property so I can pull this through.
The keys in it?
It should be.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the keys should be in it. Woo!
Hot,
She's warm.
hot for Daddy. Hotter than Daddy wants it. coming up the chimney.
10 feet of fire is coming up. It probably is 10 feet of fire going up the chimney. But you can't see it because the chimney's longer than that.
Like a, right?
Basically.
It's completely flat when it starts now.
So what happens, and one thing that very much affects the flavor, is when the buds on the maples start coming out, it changes the flavor of the syrup completely. You can still tell it's maple, but it's really not great just on pancakes or something like that. So it's pretty good for cooking still, but at that point, it almost makes it not worth boiling because it's definitely a B grade syrup. We're pushing this year a little bit because it was such a bad year. So we're basically boiling small batches rather than running 400 gallons or 500 gallons through this in a day. We're running 100 gallons, 150 gallons, 200 gallons, and essentially taste testing all the way to make sure that we're where we need to be. Lean on that chair.
Oh, yeah, it's not that it was good. Did you put a broken one out here then? Doesn't really matter that broken. Yes, it does, huh? It's a legend. You want me to bring that broken out? Here. That's all. Whoa. Let's go. Come here, Papa.
On the camera.
Ooh, that is very hot. And blowing pretty good. Huh?
Yep, pretty good.
And we're almost done.
Oh yeah.
Huh?
Is that what we have?
Oh yeah, I know what that small means. One of those. That's a don't. If you just are doing this, take one person.
That's for the sap, not the syrup. The little one, yeah. This one? The sap, not the syrup. Right? Oh yeah. Well, you can't though, because it's
different tool.
It does hold glass, but it's a different tool. Right? So it's not made for that.
Dad, what if you put up too much syrup that it overflows out the big one?
Oh, I don't think it will.
Ever?
I don't think you gotta worry about that.
Not hurt.
That's hot.
Hurt, Dad.
Everything in here is hot.
Hurt, Dad.
So, as I said earlier, we're closing in on the last boil of the year. One of those deals where we're kind of just boiling what runs that day, or the day before we'll boil it, you know, today. So what ran yesterday, and up until about noon today, we're boiling right now. Tomorrow is going to be, tomorrow evening or Saturday morning, we will boil what ran yesterday, because it will spoil very, very quickly right now, because sap is a lot like milk, where if it gets warm, it actually spoils and goes sour.
Oh, that was sour.
Hopefully you can see down here, right in here, that this door is actually glowing red. This thing is running really, really nice right now. I don't have a live time counter, let's say, as far as how many gallons per hour, but just watching the way everything is boiling, we're definitely at that 40 gallon per hour mark right now. Do a quick draw over here. Pull some syrup out. So what I did about a half an hour ago is I changed all the filters, I cleaned all the filters. All the syrup that was in that draw-off tank went into a separate tank. That way, the stuff that we're pulling off now, which definitely tastes a little bit different, is kept separate from the stuff that we made earlier today. And Daniel's playing with the warm water that's dripping off the front of the hood. So,
Just give my hand warm. If I feel the metal pipe, I really know that it is completely hot. If I feel it cold water coming out of the
yeah.
metal pipes, I know that it's not hot.
I don't think there's any cold water coming out of this thing.
I know.
Yeah.
The red pipes is most of the telling that makes everyone know that it can. We just know red pipe.
So those couple draws that I just did, I think I did 3, probably about a half a gallon we just pulled off this front pan. Essentially the way these setups work, whether it's this smaller unit or the unit that the big boys use, is the cold sap comes in at the top of the hood, it comes in the back of this hood, it zigzags through, which brings it from, you know, hopefully around 38 degrees right now. I think the sap today is a lot closer to 42 or 43 degrees. We want it as cold as possible, but it runs it through that hood, which preheats it, and it goes straight into the float box in the back. The float box, as the level in the back pan drops, it automatically calls for sap. So that's the way the float works. And the sap runs in at, let's say, 38 or 40 degrees. It comes out of that preheat hood at 180 to 190 degrees. So we're not putting cold sap at 40 degrees into an evaporator that's boiling at 213 degrees, let's say, because it's not 212. There is sugar in that, so as the sugar builds up more, the temperature of what it's boiling at does increase. But rather than shocking it with 180 degree or 170 degree difference, we're putting it in at 180, 190, and we're only looking at anywhere from a 25 to 40 degree difference, depending on how everything is running today. And that runs through it dumps in one side of this evaporator. Today it's dumping, let's see, today our sap comes in from the back, float pan, and there's a box across the back. Basically it's a distribution box, and there's a valve in there with a pipe that comes to the front, and I can either draw off, or it dumps in either this side in the front or this side in the front over here. Today it's dumping over here. It zigzags back and forth until it comes over where Daniel is. Don't pull on that. Comes over where Daniel is, where there's another float box which calls for that hot sap, which has already done an awful lot of evaporation, and it's very concentrated by the time it gets over to this float, and it calls for that hot sap to refill this front syrup pan. There's 3 dividers in this pan, here, here, and here, and it dumps in the back of this pan. It comes forward. It's 4. There's 3 dividers, which means you've got 4 spaces to fill. It comes in the back. There's a little hole here in the front in this divider, and it then flows to the back. There's a hole in the back. Back to the front. There's a hole here, and it flows back there. So essentially, and without getting into any scientific stuff, it comes in as raw sap. It flows through. Does a whole bunch of zigzags, and by the time it comes out on that side, it's syrup. So that's the basic way that these evaporators work. We run hopefully around 40 gallons an hour. That's the idea. We've gone as high as just shy of 43, and we've gone as low as 25, which is really based off of the wood that day. So I'm going to throw a couple more pieces of wood on, then I got to do a quick walk around and check things.
You come to the glow.
Yeah. Really hot there. Yep. So this door glows. The fire brick inside this thing is glowing at this point all the way to the back of the arch. I don't know that stuff right now that I'm drawing off is necessarily just cooking grade, but it was enough of a difference to where I didn't want to mix it with what we had. Especially if, you know, like Nathan and Karen want that. Or 22, 23, whatever, you know. I was saying, yeah, or even instead of, I was going to say that, instead of, what's that? No, for the, yeah, for the cooking stuff. Well, yeah, anything that we make today is gonna be light because it ran from, it hasn't had a chance to sit at all. It's only been out of the tree for a couple hours. So light, that has to do with, well, that has to do with boiling as much too. Yeah, it doesn't caramelize as much.
I wasn't sure if we were going to add any more hot inside.
I might, not tonight maybe, but.
If I had the whole what was going into it.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
Yeah, you'll come in like 10 minutes.
Bedtime soon, boy. One of the things Abby and I were just talking about was we've got a collection tank at the back of the house here, and it's a run up the hill of, I forget how many taps we've got there, maybe 80, and they are, the whole hill faces east. So as soon as the sun comes up in the morning, it hits this hill, and that sap flavor has now started to change, and because that sap flavor has changed, the whole type of syrup it produces has also changed. It tastes a little bit buddy, B-U-D-D-Y, just like it sounds. Still definitely maple syrup. You can tell it's maple syrup, but it's not something that most people are going to want to pay for. So right now what we're doing is actually boiling some of that down inside on the kitchen stove. That way the kids have it, they enjoy it. So we're doing that. Abby did mention that it was so light, it was almost clear, which is very interesting. Most of what we produce this year has been very dark, but one of the things that changes the color of the syrup is, again, one of the things, there's a lot of different dynamics, but one of them is, in this case, it's only been in that collection tank for about 2 hours. There's only a little bit in there, because I had emptied it earlier today, I cleaned it all out. So it's only about 2 hours from the point where it left the tree to being syrup, and that has actually affected the color of that a lot. She said it was almost clear, which is pretty interesting, especially late in the year. But we're going to boil that syrup down for the kids. I used to have an old homemade barrel evaporator that I started with that I gave to someone, but because that's not the grade syrup that I want to mix into this, we're not going to boil it in this evaporator. We're going to end up doing that, like I said, on the stove inside, which is not ideal. It goes slow, but it's better than just dumping something that's good. be good for a couple minutes. So again, with the color differences over the course of today, the syrup that we are producing off this evaporator has actually gone a little bit lighter because it was stuff that ran last night and this morning, and it's already in the evaporator. And it's been very, very cold. We actually had ice in a lot of the buckets. Ice can act as a natural reverse osmosis. So if you have Gatorade and it gets cold, if you leave it in your truck, not super cold for a long time, but cold enough to where it gets a little bit, you get a little ice in the middle, that Gatorade liquid that's left is incredibly sweet because the sugar freezes slower than the water that's in it. So we do have buckets still. We've got a lot of lines, but we've still got, I think, 40 or 50 taps on buckets. Some of them are a couple trees into a 5-gallon bucket, or we still have the buckets that we hang on the trees. And when there's a chunk of ice in the middle of that, we actually will throw the ice. And there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of studies. If you're a backyard producer where every single ounce counts, then you're going to keep that ice and you're going to boil it down. In our case, we're looking at it and saying that is a natural reverse osmosis. The sugar content of that ice is incredibly low compared to the sugar content left in the sap in that bucket. So we discard the ice unless we're very warm, and then we will keep it and put it in our holding tanks just to try to keep the temperature down a little bit. And that does help quite a bit. So the longer you store the sap, the more danger you have of it turning, basically, not being quite as good as it should be, or turning to the point of where you can't use it at all, which is certainly what we do not want to see here. We've had a great year. You know, if I've had a great year, it doesn't hurt my feelings to throw away 50 or 100 or 500 gallons of sap even, because we've had a great year. This year is not that year. Little tiny bit of a vapor lock just now in the preheat hood. Happens once in a while. It gets so hot in there that it'll actually bubble and boil inside those pipes. It happens more as the volume in the tank goes down because we don't have quite as much head pressure pushing it through. We're now down to right about 50 gallons. Once it hits either 10 or 15 gallons, depending on just how hot this thing is. But once it hits 10 or 15 gallons, I stop feeding it completely because it takes a long time for this to cool down. This evaporator, if we stop at 8 o'clock at night, at 6 in the morning, will still be warm. Not hot, but still warm. So it steams down for a very long time. But the whole thing is lined with fire brick. That fire brick gets hot and that holds the heat. So the idea behind leaving 15 or 20 gallons in that nurse tank is while we're doing the whole cool down process, I'm out here, I'm cleaning, I'm doing different things, prepping for the next boil that we're going to do. Everything is still steaming off and those float boxes are still calling for more sap. So that 15 gallons we figured out with this machine is just about perfect. I also keep a few gallons of sap in the back of the sap house in the 5-gallon bucket, whether it's 2.5 to 4 gallons, somewhere in there I keep back there, just in case something happens, we have a malfunction, and I need to dump fluid into this evaporator. That's just enough to kind of save us. We also have the hot water from the condensation, that distilled water that runs off. So I could dump that back in, but I'd rather not because it's already been boiled off. So I may as well dump in stuff that needs to be boiled off anyway. So that's kind of one of the things that we do. Like I said, somewhere in that 15 to 20 gallon range is just about perfect for steam off on this thing. That keeps me right where I want to be. That's going to drain our nurse tank right down to nothing. That way tomorrow when we collect, we fill that nurse tank. It's actually been supposed to be a little bit cooler tomorrow. It's not supposed to be 60 degrees, so I won't have to flush that nurse tank. But once we hit anything above 50, whenever the nurse tank is empty, I bring a hose and I flush the whole thing out, just so it's super, super fresh going in. When it's cold, you don't have to. But like I keep saying, the sap is very, very similar to milk. It will spoil under similar conditions. So if you keep it refrigerated, it's good for a long time. If it's 40 degrees, it's good for a few days. If it's 60 degrees, it goes bad after a day. So we did have some we dumped. Unfortunately, I think we've dumped probably about 500 gallons this year, because what was happening is we'd get a little run, but it wasn't enough to actually fire this thing up. So I'd put it in the holding tank, and then the next day it wouldn't run at all. So by the time we got another run, which would be enough to then fire the evaporator back up, what was there did go bad. So that's where, when you are a small operation, you can deal with boiling, let's say, 10 gallons or 20 gallons or 40 gallons. Whereas for me, at 40 gallons an hour, I basically, if I had 50 gallons to boil, I could light the fire, feed it 4 times, shut it down, and that would be it. But it's an awful lot of work. It's hours upon hours of work to do that 50 gallons, where, you know, we could do 200 gallons in almost the same amount of time, because there's setup, there's cool down, there's all the cleaning, the washing, the filtering, all that still needs to happen. So I was talking with Owen, I think we're gonna, well, I know now that the back hill behind the house is done, we'll keep the taps in for a little bit, just until I can get up there and pull them, but they are actually done as far as what's gonna be fed into this evaporator. But that is an east-facing slope, so what I was saying before is that gets lots of sun, the buds on those trees are very close to popping, so it changes the flavor of the syrup. Now, the back of the property, where the majority of our taps are, the back of the property, the whole hill faces north. So what that means is those trees stay a whole lot colder. They don't see any sun until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, only from 2 until 6 or 2 until 7. I think around 6 o'clock it goes behind the mountain. So those trees only have about 4 hours of sun on them, and it is about 10 degrees colder up there, even though it's only a half a mile away. But down in the hollow, it's about 10 degrees colder than it is here. Not always, I should say 5 to 10 degrees colder up there than it is here. And that makes a huge difference when it comes to maple. So a lot of my friends have been done boiling for about 2 weeks because it's just been too warm. And 3 weeks ago was when we tapped our back hill, that north-facing hill, because it took that long for those trees to thaw out to even start running. So it's a very interesting dynamic for that. Whereas the hill behind our house, we could have tapped that 5 weeks ago. We probably should have. Unfortunately, I lost some time due to dealing with snow and ice storm. Well, now we can see that the front door is nice and warm. fire is burning out a little bit. Get that built back up. If you have any questions about this setup or about maple syrup in general, tapping, the sap, anything like that, please go ahead and ask them. I am kind of watching the bottom of the screen just so I can answer any questions as you have them. I'm going to wiggle the phone here a little bit. Looks like I got to plug it in. I'm getting a low battery alert. There we go. We don't really advertise our syrup too much as far as it being for sale. We sell only very local right now, not in any grocery stores, not even in a farm stand. We're hoping that that will be able to change here over the next few years as we expand the maple syrup operation. Our primary income comes from the landscaping business, but this is a nice little hobby that actually does bring in a little bit of income, even though we definitely spend a lot more than we make on this. It's still a hobby that produces some income. And the nice thing is, once the major investment is made, you don't have to spend that kind of money for a while. So a few years ago, we bought this whole setup, and that was a very major investment. At this point, I think this is 4 years later, this has now broken even. So we haven't paid for the glass or the lines or anything like that, but at least this part now is paid for itself. And it's a hobby that returns your investment a little bit. There's not a whole lot of hobbies that do that. We're down to about 45 gallons in the nurse tank at this point. And the nurse tank is probably exactly what you might imagine it to be. It's a tank that we pump our sap up into. So it's up a couple feet higher than the evaporator, and it gravity feeds into the evaporator at a very slow rate. And that is referred to as the nurse tank across probably every part of the industry. That's what it's referred to as. We have another small draw coming here. I use an inverted pot lid just to keep the some of the dust out. The one large negative, there's probably people would disagree about the negatives and positives of wood-fired versus oil or propane, but one of the negatives for the wood-fire is it is dustier and dirtier than the oil. So what I was saying was I actually keep a pot over the filter and over the draw-off tank, a little pot lid. That way it keeps some of the dust out, because every time you open the door, put more wood in, a little bit of ash comes out, so sparks come out. So that helps keep things a little bit nicer. Makes filtering a little easier too, because it keeps some of that heat in. And when you're filtering, you want your syrup to be as hot as you possibly can get it, because it will run through the filters much better hot than cold or even cool. So our syrup goes through a total of 10 filters once it comes off the evaporator. It goes through 2 filters before it even gets to the evaporator. So from start to finish, it has been filtered 12 times. A lot of filtering. A lot of filtering. So what we do on the outside, as we are collecting and pumping and things like that, we put everything into our large collection tank, which is in the back of the UTV. That comes back here, whether it's from the property up the road or somewhere else. That comes back here, and it gets pumped up into the nurse tank. At the end of that hose, we've got a filter, and it's just a simple cotton filter, nothing fancy at all. But what it does is you'll get a little bit of bark or just whatever, because it is an all-natural product. These buckets hang on trees, so it's open to the elements, and you'll get some stuff like that in the sap. Well, the idea is we want everything coming into this evaporator as clean as it possibly can be. Let me throw a little more wood on. A lot more wood on, maybe. Guess it dropped down a little bit. Anyway, we want the product that comes into this evaporator as clean as it possibly can be. So we use that simple filter outside, and that makes a big difference. And then from the nurse tank to the preheat hood, what we did this year was we added this very small inline filter, and it's a simple spin down filter. It's probably about that big. Not much bigger than, let's say, a 20-ounce Gatorade bottle, and that has a very fine mesh in it. That's a secondary filter. It gets out and any, it takes any of the bark that's out. Once we hit this time of year, bugs love anything sweet, right? Bugs love sweet stuff. Ants love sweet stuff. Moths love sweet stuff. So once in a while you get a couple bugs in the sap itself. This filters that out before it goes in the evaporator, which is really ideal. You don't want that stuff boiling in with your syrup. That's kind of, you just don't want it. But mostly what it does is it captures those little pieces of bark. I actually haven't seen a bug in the filter all day. I just looked at it. But there's definitely some bark in there. Depending on the time of year, we'll have to, if it was a windy day, we'll have to clean the filter more because stuff was blowing around in the woods. Leaves and bark and whatnot. So those are the two filters that happen before it hits this preheat hood. It does its whole cycle through this whole evaporator. It goes through the preheat hood. It comes out at 180 to 190 degrees into the float box. It goes into the distribution box in the back of the evaporator. It runs through the whole evaporator, and then it comes into the float box here in the front. Whether it's that side or this side, this is a reversible flow evaporator, so I can draw off of either side depending on how we have it set up for the day. It needs to be set up that way when it's cold, otherwise you're going to be burning your hands. So whatever way we set it up for the day is the way we run it all day long, whether it's for 2 hours or 12 hours. Once it's syrup, over here today we're drawing off on the left side of the evaporator. Once it's syrup, it goes through. Well, today I've got it set up with 4 pre-filters and 1 large Orlon filter, which is a very, very heavy filter. So the pre-filters are exactly what it sounds like. It's a very thin, fine filter. It's meant to capture all this sugar sand. And the reason that I run 4 is as one gets clogged, I can pull it out, empty it into the 3 that are left. I can wash that filter, put it back on the outside of the 3 that are left, and continue filtering, and we just keep working a rotation that way. So those 4 pre-filters and 1 Orlon filter. And then what we do is once that's all done, is while the syrup is still hot, we put it in our Smoky Lake Maple finisher bottle or canner that we have, but it also has a filter. And that has 5 filters in it as well. You can run as many filters as you want. It doesn't make sense to run more than that. But there's one, very much like our draw-off tank, there's 1 very heavy filter on the bottom and then 4 pre-filters on top. And usually once it hits the bottler, it's really, you're not filtering out nearly as much as you do from straight off the evaporator. So that's our basic filtration system. That's how that works. But that's where we get our fact that we are filtering from start to finish 12 times. And that's an awful lot. It's a lot of work. Oh. No. Yep. So that's where we get our number of 12 filters. Once it goes through those flat filters on our bottler, that is a water jacketed bottler. Actually not a water jacket, there's a pan of water underneath it which steams up and keeps that bottler warm. It's got a small flame underneath there that keeps that water warm, and because that water is warm, it distributes all that heat nice and evenly across the bottom of that bottler, because as you introduce heat, especially pinpoint type heat to maple syrup, you will create niter once again. And that's what we're trying not to do. We're trying to filter all of that out. That way your end product is nice and clear. What I think exclusively now all the large producers do is they use a filter press with diatomaceous earth, and that gives you just an incredible clear filtered end product. Put some more wood on. Now, if you are doing this at home, you are not going to want to use this filtering system that I use. Because if you're doing it at home, every ounce of syrup is precious. There's so much work that goes involved. There's so much work involved in it that if you're using a filter system like I have, you're going to make a gallon of syrup and half of it is going to be absorbed into these filters, so that's not going to work well for you. If you're doing it at home, what I would recommend is stainless pot, whatever size you're going to use, whether it's a 2 gallon, 3 gallon, 4 gallon, 5 gallon. But get that pot, that's what you're going to boil down in. And I would recommend not using these pre-filters even, because they're going to clog up a lot and it's going to be very frustrating for you, especially when you're just starting out. So if you have something that's brand new, cotton, wash it by hand, very high heat, or wash it in your washing machine would be fine. Do not use laundry detergent, because that'll add stuff that you do not want into your finished product. But wash it really good, like I said, by hand. I would even go so far as, let's say it's a pillowcase. That's a great example. So you're going to filter at home. If you're doing this at home, again, this is not the way we do it here, but if you're doing it at home, you're going to go get a good pillowcase that's all cotton. You're going to put it in hot water. After you wash it, you're going to boil it, because that's going to get all the rest of the crap out of there. And then you're going to filter through that, because that is going to get anything out that you don't want, any of that big stuff out, and it'll still give you a pretty nice finished product without the waste that we experience running these big filters. What's nice for me is that big Orlon filter. What I do is I run a little bit of hot sap off the back of the evaporator. I rinse that filter in that, because there's nothing bad in that filter, it's just that sugar sand, but there's a lot of syrup in there. So I will rinse it in that, and then I will dump that back in the evaporator. The pre-filters get rinsed in the extremely hot water that runs off of this whole setup. Yeah, if you've got any questions, please ask. I'd love to answer any of the questions. This is This is one of those things that I absolutely love to do. It's a lot of work. I think I probably need a hobby that doesn't require so much work, because most of mine tend to just end up having a lot of work surrounding them. But that, back to the filtering process, that was what I would recommend if you're filtering at home. Something clean, simple, and you can make your own half pint or quart of syrup. Just keep in mind that the average for a sugar maple is 40 gallons of syrup to 40 gallons of sap to 1 gallon of syrup. You can tap a red maple, you can tap a silver maple, but your averages are going to drop drastically. And this time of year, that's where the flavor really changes a whole lot. So one thing that we do here is we only tap sugar maples. As time goes on, we may look at hooking in some loop, a couple loops of taps with the red maples, especially if we can run them on their own closed system, let's say. So right now, if you had any red maples, you're done if it was hooked in with your sugar maples. But our sugars they're not really, especially the back of the property, those buds have not swollen yet, so the maple flavor has not changed yet. All right, 30 gallons left. So if you have not done so, I would appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe to our channel. There's other maple videos on our channel. There should be a couple live feeds that I did last year, along with some bottling videos I did. I think the first bottling video I did, I should probably take down at this point and update, because we were still fine-tuning some things. But the general idea with bottling is once you are at actual syrup, which is essentially 7 degrees above the boiling temperature of water. The reason I say above the boiling temperature of water is because water does not always boil at 212 degrees. Water might boil at 210 all the way up to 213, 214, even in your location based off of atmospheric pressures. So we've had instances where we should be drawing our syrup off at 219 degrees, which is 7 degrees above the boiling point of water. We should be doing that, right? If everything's working the way it should. We had points last year where we were drawing our syrup at 222 degrees because the pressures in the atmosphere had changed that much where it changed the boiling point of the water and the boiling point of the syrup where it's actually syrup. So we use a hydrometer to actually accurately measure when we're at syrup. I personally always go a little bit over I like syrup a little bit thicker, and most of the people who buy from us like their syrup a little bit thicker as well. So, messing around a lot with this feed system tonight. The head pressure is down to almost nothing, so trying to get that all situated over here. Anyway. So back to when syrup bottling and canning, which is essentially the same thing. When you're going to can, when you're going to bottle, you want to bring your syrup, as long as it's already at syrup, you want to bring your syrup back up to about 185 degrees. I say about, that's pretty much where you want to bring it. Because once you go above one, there you go, still alive. Sorry about that. So the phone overheated. Imagine that, being this close to a stove. Anyway, as far as bottling and canning, what you want to do is once you know you have syrup, which is, as we had discussed, whether you go by temperature or you use a hydrometer, Murphy cup, whatever it may be, you want to bring your syrup back up to 185 degrees. And anything above 185, once you hit that 190 mark, you start creating niter. And that was one of the things that we... thank you. I try to keep them informative. But that's one of the things that we try to filter out is all that niter, right? That's why you're going to have a hazy syrup or settlings at the bottom, things like that. But you also want it hot enough, that way it stores well and it stores for a long time. So basically what you want to do, bring your syrup up to 185, and if you're doing a small batch in your kitchen, you've got, you know, 1 mason jar, 2 mason jars, something like that, or maybe you want to use a decorative bottle. I personally don't love the decorative bottles. I think they're overrated. They are very expensive compared to mason jars, and there's a lot of glass in them. And what happens is a lot of glass is going to suck that heat right out of your syrup. But if you are going to use a decorative jar, I'm going to go off on a side note here. If you are going to use a decorative jar, warm it up in the oven first. Not hot, but warm it up to, you know, 120, 150 degrees, something like that. Because that's going to keep that syrup warm enough. Sorry, something sounded funny. That's going to keep that syrup warm enough to properly seal. And then what you want to do, I'll grab a bottle here. We got a little dusty, but we got a nice light amber bottle here. Pretty nice stuff. This is actually from last year. But what you want to do is, in these bottles in particular, these are called pancake flasks. There is a ring right at the very bottom of this black cap. You're going to fill with hot syrup all the way up to that ring. You're going to put that cap on, tighten it down, and you're going to turn the bottle upside down quick, and then lay it on the flat on the counter and let it cool down. And one of the things that happens by turning it upside down is it seals that lid and that ring nice, and it also sterilizes that even more than it already is, because 185, 190 degree syrup will basically kill anything. So that's the way you do that. What we do is we bottle them, let them sit like that, and then what you'll see is, because this is so hot, it's going to continue to steam. Wherever your air bubble is, let's say it's here, is going to have a little bit of steam on the jar. So when we're all done, we just do that when it's nice and cool, and we set it in a box. So this was bottled, this particular one was last year. I would say this was one of our first runs last year, which was probably mid-February, if I remember correct. Might have even been the 20th or 23rd, somewhere in there that we bottled this. But you can see that's pretty clear. The filtering process worked well on that. Syrup lasts basically forever if it's packaged right and kept in the right conditions. So, syrup is a lot like honey, where it's essentially a forever food. It really doesn't go bad. One of the things that we love about the glass, and one of the reasons we package in the glass, is you as a customer, or maybe not you, but our customers, when they come here, they can see exactly what they're getting. So when it's in plastic, you never really know what you're getting, what it looks like, and there's just something extremely satisfying about what I just did, which is hold up that glass and look through it. Now again, that's a very light syrup. That particular batch had almost a butterscotch flavor, which was pretty cool. I had never produced anything quite like that before, so it was definitely interesting for me when we produced that. But again, the glass, one of the benefits is, as a customer, they can look through it, they see it, it's nice, it's pretty, you can see what you're eating. The second reason I like glass is because the glass, with those canning lids that we use, especially anything in a mason jar, those things will last for 20 years, 25 years. I have syrup that I made when I was in 4-H, and I'd have to check the date on it, but if my memory serves correct, it was either 99, 2001, or 2003, somewhere in there. And we had it graded at the fair. It was one of the entries that I did. But that particular jar of syrup, we have not opened. So if it was 99, it's 26 years ago this year, or if it's 2003, it's 22 years ago. That bottle of syrup, other than now finally creating a little bit of crystallization on the bottom, that bottle of syrup that I bottled 22 to 26 years ago is just as good today as it was that many years ago. So syrup will last for a very long time. If you've got a lot of syrup, keep it somewhere cool out of the sun, and it'll last just forever. So if you've got a basement, keep it down there. It's great. If you have syrup that gets a little bit of mold on it, I don't know if I have any out here. I did the other day just to be able to show people. I don't see any. I must have brought it inside. But I had one, and this is what we were talking about with the fact that this glass will suck the warmth right out of the syrup. We were bottling, and I had more syrup than I thought, so I grabbed a couple glasses that had been sanitized but that weren't hot, and I bottled in that, and the top of both of those actually got a little bit of mold on them. But if you have syrup that, especially if you're doing it at your house, if you have syrup that has a little bit of mold on the top, skim that mold off, bring it back up to a boil, and then dump it in something clean, and that syrup is still perfectly good. Especially that white mold. The white mold is really not an issue. I've heard a lot of old timers say, "Oh, just skim it off and eat it right out of the jar." If you're comfortable doing that, I haven't heard of anybody get sick from it. But if you get syrup that has a little bit of mold on it, skim it off, heat it back up, put it in another clean jar, and you're good to go. It does happen sometimes. I recommend once you open a bottle of syrup, you know, if you're gonna use it within a week, you don't have to refrigerate it. But I recommend, if you're gonna have it for a while, keep it in the fridge. Again, you don't have to, but keeping things cool makes a big difference in longevity. So we're kind of on the cool down now. You'll notice the door is not glowing as red as it was. I'm using also some hemlock that was a little bit wet, just kind of to burn it up here and get it out of the way. But getting rid of some of the less premium stuff now that we're on the cool down. Just need to boil up. I'll check, but I think probably about 5 gallons, judging by the math that I've done in my head. And then we'll hit cool down stage. Yeah. Yep, we just hit 20 gallons left in the evaporator, or in the nurse tank. About 5 more gallons puts us at that 15 where I want to be. And I will hit cool down stage, so the wood that I put in is going to bring me awfully close to that. One thing you might notice, let's see, is it in the frame? I don't know if it's in the frame here. Now it's in the frame. Over here. Let's see if I can get it. Yeah, there we go. We've got a fire extinguisher sitting there, up on the wall. That's an ABC fire extinguisher. Those of you that know me know that I'm in the fire department. Fire safety with this stuff, incredibly important. This front door, when it gets hot, is glowing. Now, right now, that front door is over 1,000 degrees. When it gets glowing, I don't really know how hot it gets, 1,400. The very back of this unit registers at over 950 degrees. So there is a lot of heat in here, and fire safety is always a big concern. We've got wood, we've got, we're surrounded by wood. So I have an ABC extinguisher in the back of the shed, or the shack, whatever you want to call it. And what I have behind me that you can't see is about this big, a full-size pressurized water fire extinguisher. Because that one back there is really, really only in case of emergency. If we had to actually pull the pin on that and use that, every bit of open syrup in here is garbage. So it would be better than the whole place burning down, but it's one thing that we really don't want to do. Whereas, if the wall catches fire, or my little wood pile here catches fire, and I can hit it with the water fire extinguisher, well, hey, that's only water. And water near sap is not a problem. That the dry chem gets into everything. It's horrible, horrible stuff. Works great, but it's horrible stuff. So we do take the fire safety part here very, very seriously. I don't want to burn my sugar house down, especially since all this stuff is expensive to replace. And I don't think that would be a very fun project. Well, it would be a fun project to replace it if I want to replace it. It would not be a fun project to replace it if everything caught fire. Again, we're kind of on a cool down at this point. Letting things steam down a little bit, slow down a little bit. We'll be shutting off the live stream soon, probably in 10 minutes or so. So if you have any questions, any comments, please ask them. Again, I'm monitoring that just so I can answer the questions. We do have maple syrup for sale. We did set up a Venmo account for the maple business itself. We're also in the process of figuring out how to ship it. It is very, very expensive to ship, but it is something we could look at doing if you really wanted to do that. If that's something that interests you, you can comment here, but specifically send us an email to elmendorfacres@gmail.com, and I can get you info on that. But again, it's very, very expensive to actually ship the syrup. It's somewhere in the, because we're only doing it very small batch versus people who ship all the time who get different rates, but it's somewhere in the $20 to $25 to ship. But it is an option that is available, and with that price of $20 to $25, it appears that we can ship a couple quarts, maybe a pancake flask, and what we're going to be doing for the actual maple sugar itself is vacuum sealed in small mason jars. So whether it's the granulated or the candy, it's going to be in that rather than the gift box, so it doesn't get destroyed in shipping. But it looks like we'll be able to ship 3 or 4 things. So I guess maybe it's not so bad if you spread out the cost of shipping over each item. But that is something that we've been working on. It's been a decent amount of work to get that all figured out. But if you'd like to talk to us about that, send us an email, elmendorfacres@gmail.com. Right now we have basically all darker syrup, all dark amber, or very, very dark. Those are the two that we have in either quart mason jars, pint mason jars. We have some of the pancake flask bottles. We also have that hot bottled cinnamon syrup. We tried something new with the espresso bean. We do have that. The beans are actually in the syrup, so it's a little bit different to pour. It's actually pretty good to just put in a spoon and eat. But we have that as well. We're experimenting with a better way to do the espresso bean syrup, but that's in research and development right now. But any of those things can be shipped. So the cinnamon syrup and the dark amber are definitely two of my personal favorites, along with any of the sugar, whether the granulated or the actual candy. And like I said, we'll have, whether it's this year or next year, we're going to be looking at a cotton candy machine. So thank you very much for joining us for this live stream. Hopefully it was a little more enjoyable than the last one that we did, where I had to hit mute about 20 minutes in, it seemed like. We will often mute when people show up to visit. Mostly because we try to keep this, we very purposefully try to keep this channel extremely family and child friendly. So a lot of visitors may not use the language that I would want across the channel. So that's the main reason behind the mute. I would imagine if you've been here a little while, you'll actually notice I've been yelling, and now I don't have to. The boil has calmed down. It's much quieter in here than it was. So, still boiling very much across the front pan. There's a lot of sweet in that front pan still. The syrup today that ran through is actually getting lighter, which is interesting. I think I said before, Abby said the stuff inside was almost clear, which is crazy, but it's just, it was nice and cold last night. We had a couple nights. It helped reset the trees. Unfortunately, it was a little bit too little, too late. This year, please, on the cotton candy, yeah. If we get the cotton candy machine, I'm going to weigh 300 pounds by the next live. Oh, boy. Anyway, well, that's about it for today, folks. Thank you very much for checking in. See, we've got a couple extra people that just joined us. But if you've got any questions or comments, we're going to sign off here in a couple minutes. But type them in, and I will do my best to answer them. I think we're done drawing off for the day. I just checked the temperatures, and it's definitely dropping. So we're not going to be drawing off the front pan anymore today. And at this point, it's just the nurse tank is feeding into the back pan, raising those levels. The temperature of the entire evaporator has gone down significantly. Anyway, if you haven't done so already, please give a like. It helps us provide a little bit of content. We're actually at the point now where YouTube has decided we have provided enough content with enough view time and enough subscribers to make a couple bucks. So by hitting that like or watching a couple other videos, it helps us keep producing this type of stuff, which is a lot of fun for me, and it's a very nice addition to the very small amount of income we get specifically from the maple syrup. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you all next time.